Welcome to the Doghouse. Have a listen as we take a look at life, love, and art in all its forms. Here's your host, the Rock Dog, Andrew Davis.
I am the Rock Dog, Andrew Davis. We are in the Doghouse, and I'm with Kevin Haughton, who is with Clear Flow. Now, what you have come up with here, Kevin, is revolutionary. I think you are gonna change the world. You are going to save lives with this. It's absolutely amazing. Before we get into it, though, let's find out about you.
All right.
Where are you from?
I'm from here, the Comox Valley. I've lived in the Comox Valley for 50 of my 54 years. Yeah. So born in Ontario. We came out here immediately with my dad and family, of course. He was in the armed forces, and never left.
Where did you go to university? Did you get teaching and all that good stuff?
God, you can ask me that. Yeah.
To come up with this stuff is just, where did it come from?
I am not an engineer. I left school 3/4 of the way through grade 11.
Yeah.
School was sort of getting in the way of my education.
As it usually does.
In my case.
Yeah.
Stay in school, kids. Do not listen to me. So, no, I'm not an engineer, but I'll tell you where it came from. It's real simple. My father passed away 5 months ago now, and he literally is, to this day, the smartest man I've ever met in my life. And I mean that, and I met a lot of people. Yeah. He is, so my father is a Brit, joined the RAF, remustered Canadian Armed Forces, and was a electrician, mechanic, tech on aircraft of all form. And when we were young and everybody was outside doing whatever they do as kids, we were inside, and my dad was teaching us how to fix and repair stuff. He had an appliance repair business as well in the basement of our house. So at age 7, we were given tools, and we were taught how to repair a toaster and a wash machine. And he was also a proponent of saying, if you want to learn something, you need to draw it out. Draw it out and understand it. If you draw that out, you'll understand how that corresponding component or piece fits with that, and then so on and so on and so on. And you get that picture in your head, and you can do anything. And he's right? And I mean that. So, for example, and I love to tell this story. So when we were young, we would go we go out to the riverside, and we had taken bicycle inner tubes, and we had nicked a seat off of a playground swing. Right, and that's what we did. I think it was okay to do that back then. And we would put helmets on and shit, and pardon the language, and we would actually try to shoot ourselves in the river, but it was awful. We were idiots, right? We couldn't do that. We had about a 3-foot maximum reach. And my dad came out, and instead of my dad losing his marbles, like my mom would do, Kevin, you're going to die. My dad would say, look, you got it all wrong. Right, come over here. I mean, he brought us over, and he sat down. Here's what you got to do. You got to learn about leverage, moment, pound, inches, and fulcrums, and how that all fits into the physics of what you're trying to do. And he helped us devise a longer reach with a bigger bottom. We stuffed magazines in our shirts and our pants for protection, and an old CCM helmet on, and he had us shooting like 30 feet across into the river. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And then we go home and build a trebuchet. You know what a trebuchet catapult?
The catapult.
He built one in the backyard.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that's what my dad did with us.
No wonder that then you're coming up with stuff like this. Water. Clean water is the thing for life. Without it, there's no life.
Yeah. Right.
And now you're bringing this to people around the world. Tell us about Clear Flow and the machines that you have running. Now, I know you got one running in China right now.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, that's the only one we have. We have one system that's actually operating in Nanjing, China, if you're familiar with that, where that is. So the system's been running since, 11 o'clock, May 11th, 2018. Yeah. And it's been running flawlessly.
Yeah.
And that's the first system built in China, and we're now going to go into production here in the Comox Valley, which has been my dream, right? So we're going to be securing a spot and manufacturing in North America to have the Canadian branded ClearFlow system entered into the market wherever we want to go. We're looking at Africa, South America, Haiti, even Moldova, you name it.
Well, and what this does is it cleans water. And it cleans it using solar power and wind energy as well.
Yes.
It's absolutely amazing how this works.
Yeah, well, it's pretty rudimentary, and I'm not trying to downplay what I've done here. So it's solar powered and or wind powered and or grid powered. The idea is to get away from the grid. Usually in these marginalized areas in the rural nowheres, there's no grid power. There just isn't, right? So we're going to rely upon those renewables, which is solar and or wind. When there's not enough solar, we have a hybrid system that will actually engage in the wind and actually take over and supplement, not augment, but supplement that it is that we're lacking, right? So for instance, we have 12 PV panels, we'll call them, that produces 3.5 kilowatts through a 48 volt system, battery charge, inverted, to take that DC power, turn it around into AC power to run our submersible pumps and our finish pumps, etc. When we have overcast days and cloud trespass and we have lower solar energy, the system automatically understands that. So if we have a static, constant wind of, say, 5 knots, it'll take over and it'll actually run the system just as well with residual power.
Wow.
On top of that.
And it's been running nonstop since May 2018.
Yeah, we've had our own forced shutdowns for testing, but essentially it's gone good as gold. Yeah, and it's mitigated that water contaminated source, which was highly contaminated, into absolutely clean, fresh, potable water.
From what I read, over 6.5 million liters has been produced since
Correct.
May 18th.
You did your homework.
May 2018. I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so that's the one in China. Where does their water come from, though? Like when we're talking like
Right.
raw water, we're not talking sewage. We're talking river runoff or
any brackish water. So we call it ground or surface water. So from a borehole well, if you will, in the ground, into a contained or aquifer otherwise, or into a stream, river, lake, etc. We can also connect into municipal. We can connect into an existing system and just take that municipal water that's not good, as we find in many, many regions, right, and actually filter that as well.
This would be where I guess you want to take this and put it into like First Nations here in Canada.
Absolutely. I was just on the phone this morning, and we're just in dialogue about 5 minutes in the car out front here with one of the First Nations. Yeah, that's my goal.
I urge everybody to check out clearflow.ca. If you're listening to this right now, log on to the website and you can see what's going on and maybe kind of follow along with what Kevin's talking about here. Clearflow.ca. Natural filter media. This is something that stuck out to me because I didn't really understand exactly what it meant. So I'm hoping that you could explain.
Yeah, absolutely. So in water filtration, there's many ways of filtering water. We've heard of them all. There's charcoal's a name that's thrown around quite a bit. It's ubiquitous in the system in filtering, under the tap or in line. Even the refrigerator has a charcoal filter. There's reverse osmosis. There's ionizing. There's distillation. And then there's what we call the age-old practice of what we're using, which is sort of a hybrid of what's been around since the 16th century, called sand filtration. So, back in the day, they just basically layered multiple layers of sand in various sizes, if you will, to break it down. Your water source is poured over top in old buckets, and then you just wait and wait and wait, and it finally just drips out the bottom, right? A very slow process, but it does work. It's very effective. We've taken that and turned it into a sort of a combination of that, what we call rapid sand and slow sand filtration. So we're somewhere in between there. So we have filter vessels that I've strategically layered multiple media layers of various natural media. So gravel, fine gravel, silica sand to a certain size, bone char, anthracite, zeolite, and granular activated carbon, to name a few. Those are sort of common denominators in all of our systems.
Yeah.
And then from there, we add or subtract different layers depending on what the source is. So if you take a body of media and have our water flowing from the top to the bottom, what you're doing is, in simple terms, without getting into the science of it, those particles are just going to be basically trying to make their way through very rough entrances and very rough paths. They're not going to make it. They're going to get caught.
Yeah.
They're going to make fast, we call it. And then if you keep doing that through different layers and more layers yet and more layers yet, and then the flow is adjusted to suit that science, the end result is you'll remove most all of the turbidity. Turbidity is a big one, right? Which is if you hold a glass of water up, it's the cloudy, mucky looking, that's the turbidity. So we reduce that down to World Health standards and exceed them. So we're meeting World Health Organization standards and also local jurisdictions, which are even lower, right? For instance, Canada.
Yeah.
So, but the big thing with natural media is it's all very much organic, right? And the second thing is when you have filtered your body of water through that, the result is a really clean, fresh tasting glass of water because you've retained all the good minerals.
Yeah.
Right? If you use reverse osmosis, for instance, which is just a membrane, and you're forcing water through with massive pressure, right? It's a very inefficient system too, because for every 1 good liter you get, you've wasted 20. That's the ratio.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Oh.
And then as the demand goes up higher for the consumer, taking from the system, that can reach up to, that can exponentially grow to 300%. So it's hugely wasting. And you've diminished all trace minerals. You've gotten rid of the calcium, the magnesium, the fluoride. Now, there's lots of argument out there to say that fluoride is not good for you, but fluoride at certain levels is a necessary requirement.
Yeah.
Not a lot. It's a very fine balance. Calcium, we need that. We need magnesium. RO systems eliminate that. You also come with a very deadened tasted water, right?
Yeah.
A lot of boutique water companies will put calcium and magnesium back in, so it tastes like water again. Right? Evian does that, and it tastes great, but it costs a fortune. It's also a bottle of water. Bad stuff. Right?
Yes.
So, yeah, natural filtration is basically taking the earth and cutting a slice of it, and we're using a cross-section of the earth's natural filter.
Do you think, do different medias catch different particles?
Yes, they do. Yeah. So we look at things like, for any, like there's anions and cations. Does that make any sense? So different particles, metals, chemicals, and other. So, and microbacterial. So, for instance, if you want to work on eliminating some of the metals, you'll add some anthracites. If you want to work on eliminating a lot of the organics, the VOCs, the volatile organics, you'll look at silica sand, zeolite, etc. Right? So, again, we take the raw water source and we say, okay, of these 30 parameters, we want to reduce these. It's called a log reduction down to meet standards. Right? And we say, okay, well, we need this. There's a bit of engineering going on here now. We don't just moo-ha with pop bottles. We actually look at it and say, okay, throw it in the computer and say, okay, we need this much. Volume in the cylinder, and this is the flow to bring this number of per 100 milligrams down to this number of 100 per 100 milligrams. Yeah, that's how we do it.
And what do you say to people that say that you had chemicals? Because sodium hypochlorite is something that stood out to me. Now, I know sodium is salt.
Yes.
I don't know what the hypochlorite is. Well, and I know a lot of people look at chemicals and they go, well, why are you adding chemicals? And they get scared of that, right? So what do you say to that?
Well, number one, it's always a real issue to put that into a presentation deck, add it to a piece of material, and or even discuss it, because people do exactly what you do. They're like, well, that's a chemical. But the reality is sodium hypochlorite is a natural chlorine. It's a disinfectant.
Yeah.
So in the city water here in Courtenay, I think it's 2.5 parts per million that they sort of work as a level. The reason you do that is because even through all their filtration, you're going to remain to have some, we'll call them bad contaminants, right? So in order to get rid of that, Health Canada, World Health Organization, et cetera, they dictate and say, well, you have to have some sort of residual disinfectant after the fact to remain, right? I know that they blow that limit. Oftentimes, I can smell a glass of water in Courtenay, and I can tell you it's 3.4, it's 3.6. I know it, but it's a necessary evil. If you use naturally generated sodium hypochlorite, and I'll explain to you what makes that, then you'll understand that it's absolutely fine. So we take rock salt that you find anywhere in the world. Rock salt, you can find it, and this is anywhere. You can't find drinking water, you cannot find money, food, or sustenance, but you can find rock salt, right? So we take rock salt, mix it in with our already processed raw water that's already finished and clean. We then add a electrolyzer, and we add 9 amps and 120 volts for 24 hours. That chemical reaction from anode to anode produces sodium hypochlorite. It's a natural disinfectant. So it just sits in a solution tank. The operator makes a batch every week or 2 weeks, whatever the necessity is for the consuming amount. And then it's dosed in through a diaphragm pump that's controlled by a PLC control that I've written all the PLC step logic to tell the system we need. Through analyzing, we put a set point at, say, 1 part per million. Well, it'll remain in that 0.8, 1 part per million, and it just doses it in exactly.
How big are these machines? Like,
Well, it's designed to sit in a 10-foot shipping container, so it's 8.6 by 8 by 10 feet. Everything fits in, and it's designed that way so we can ship that anywhere in the world, right? Shipping is a big item in this. So all the panels, et cetera, sit inside. When it lands on site, you just pull everything out and you erect the solar panel array. It takes 3 days to set the system up from landing to pumping 50,000 liters of water a day, right?
that's pretty fast.
Yeah, but we're also working on a smaller system, the Mobile Pure 8, which is a ruggedized trailer. It'll have a smaller PV. It's a smaller output, 20,000 liters. It can be picked by any medium helicopter or chucked in the back of an airplane. So it's a more of a rapid deployment disaster relief system we were working on.
Right, that's what I was reading about earlier. That's a place where if there was like a massive earthquake, like in Haiti, you could send that down there.
Absolutely. We can send our system as it is down there. It can be transported, not a problem, right? And we still call that mobile. It's intermodal, but it is mobile. It can be picked up and moved.
Yeah.
It can be struck in 2 days and gone to the next spot, right? And enough sustenance for 1,500 to. I mean, in those cases, there's enough for 2,500 people a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your plan to do it for here and Canada as well? Like, where do you want to see these things?
Well, I mean, number one, we have all sorts of call for development all over the world. Like we have 3 people right now that are campaigning for a system, and it's in one of the richest, remotest islands you can imagine without naming names, and it's for a group of people that have nothing but money and they want to make sure their water's fine. But I don't want that to be the first system. That's not what I'm after at all, in any way, shape, and or form. So that happens in Canada too. We've got a lot of lake cottage areas. We've got a lot of places that are primary to that sort of model. We don't want to do that. Maybe later. But so my entrance and idea is to get into the First Nations. Obviously, there's, at last count, there's like 95 that I can see that our system would fit into.
Yeah.
600 plus communities that are 120 that are on boil water or non-consume, right? And it's an easy solution is the other thing. And I am my own biggest proponent, but I'll tell you, it's a real, we're looking at how to mitigate things and not exasperate the already ridiculous process. And here's where I go with my rant, right? So I'm really familiar with the way this works with First Nations government, and I understand that gap in between that can never seem to be bridged. Now, there's a gap, and there's a group of people on this side, which are the First Nations, and then there's the government. And part of the problem is there's a process that says we're going to look into it, research it, then we start ringing up the adding machine. We're going to do some front-end engineering. There's, $5,000, $10,000. We're going to do some other engineering. There's $100,000. 3 years later, we're going to involve this into it. 4 years later, we're going to look at a $8 million plant, land-based plant for a community of 400 people, right? This ultra-sophisticated thing that's going to end up costing $10 million. And when they are built, they just go derelict because they're unable to operate the systems. Right? And they're far too complex for what's needed. They take far too long, right? There's no real health board that governs First Nations.
Yeah.
That's another problem, right? So in this situation, the model that I can see working is, number one, we're prepared to place a demonstration system at our expense. We're going to go put the thing on there. We'll place it and we'll run it for a trial period of a month. And they can do third-party testing with Health Canada, et cetera. We'll provide performance guarantees. We will pump this much a day. You can look at the O&M. And at the end of that period, they can assume it. Now, it's an even easier way of entering into this scenario is we'll take care of all the training. We'll set up an O&M plan, like a managed service program. We're going to make sure that the life cycle longevity is there. We're not going to give you the keys and go away, right? So some of these communities are pumping or trucking in water. Shoal Lake 40, for instance, in Winnipeg, is trucking in water to the tune of $150,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
They just got the Freedom Road pulling through, but our system, that's what our system costs. They'd have it paid off in 1 year. That's literally what it costs, and that would provide enough for 5 Shoal Lakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess obviously the problem is government and how to push and get these things done. So what can we do on a street level or a grassroots level to help this?
I think, okay, that's an awesome question because and we have a lot of folks that are, the interest is as soon sort of let the cat out of the bag. The interest has been phenomenal. I have 225 messages I haven't even been able to get to, right? Yeah. But the way to activate this is to find the community that has the ability to say, okay, we're going to be the trendsetters. We're not going to rely on the government.
Yeah.
We're literally going to do this ourselves, right? So I have more research to do, but the way I understand it, and we're in the right building, which is fantastic,
Yep.
right? I think that depending on what treaty level and how a particular band sits, they're able to effect a band council resolution and say, we already have so much money in our bank account. We don't have to call on the government for this yet, right? We're going to do with you on the criteria assessment, develop a public-private partnership, a PPP, in a sense is a true essence of a PPP, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to enter into an agreement with you where you're going to place this system, ClearFlow. You're going to be pumping water within 3 days. We're going to watch and monitor, and after it's done everything you said it will do, we'll assume the system, and we can even finance that. We've got folks that are willing to help us finance that First Nation.
Yeah.
So it's literally an equipment-to-own lease. So it's even easier to get into. There's no capital. There's no massive capital. And then once that's done, then they can their mindset at ease, the health and vibrancy in the community is already triggered into a whole other realm, and then they can look at getting those monies back from the government, in which they will. Right? So it's a fast track.
Yeah, it's totally incredible, Kevin, and to just know over the last couple of years bumping into you that you were working on this project.
Right.
And I think when I ran into you the last time, you were in South America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is this the same project you were working on then?
It is, and that's a bit of the backstory. And I should say this. So where this whole thing came from was I was down in South America, and we saw a fellow. I'll give you the sort of Cliff Cole's notes on this. There was a fellow trying to deploy water drinking systems down there. And we said, this is genius, because this is something I wanted to do. I've been playing around with, right? Okay. So we got involved, and a couple of other Canadian friends and our Panamanian friends. We started a South American SA, a company. SA is the same as an Inc. company or limited here. Yeah. We said, we're going to promote and distribute. We're going to help you get these out, because I've spent a lot of years in the furthest, weirdest, remotest spots of the planet, and I know the people. I learned to speak Spanish and a few other languages I'm getting better at, and I'm a sort of a boots on the ground kind of guy, and I can also obviously clearly do what I'm doing in a higher level of respect. But I said I can go out and I can get these things in and I can get them set up and we can do this. Well, we had a system he had designed and he brought in, and then it wasn't long after we realized it wasn't doing at all what it was purported to do, right? And I started asking the questions, and then as soon as I started asking the questions, there was a distance because they were annoyed because I was onto what, I mean, I'd ask them, how is this supposed to happen if that can't?
Yeah.
Because this is how I think. And they wouldn't answer the questions. And it got to a point where all of our partners had expunged all this money, and it was a waste of effort. And that guy turned out to be not a solid cat, right? And we're like, I'm done. I was really discouraged. I was like, I can't believe this. And one of the worst things was we got so close to some of these folks, and they were so happy. It was like, this is the biggest gift in their life. And I was like, I have to go away now saying we can't do this.
Yeah.
Right? And that was fun. Excuse me. That was awful.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So I have my own idea on how this thing should be and what it needs to do. So I got to work, and I developed everything in there that needed to be the way it is so that it does what it's supposed to do. I ran it through. I designed this thing, a lot of it in the computer. I had 96 field books. It was a thing. My family thought I was nuts, but they were with me the whole time. And I was doing a lot of this in the bush, right? And then I finally, got to the point where I filed patents and built a BOM at 6,286 parts down to the last flat washer. And we built our system in China. And it didn't take much tweaking, and we got it.
And the difference, like there's pictures on the website that shows, a little boy that's holding a glass of water that was the old stuff, and then the fresh one, and it's just night and day.
Yeah, it literally is just like that. What's even weirder is, so when we give somebody fresh water, one of the first things they do is they almost want to go, what the hell is that? Because that doesn't taste right to them. And so there's a curve, and we have to explain now what healthy water tastes like. So this is part of the job. It's like, right? Oh, man, it doesn't smell like poop.
Yeah,
and that's not good. And that's most of these folks live and die by their water source. They literally eat, sleep, bathe, do their business in there, and it's just what happens, right? They get pushed out and they're forgotten about. And some of these folks don't even speak Spanish down there. It's the indigenous language that I haven't quite understood, right?
Yeah.
They don't know.
I was about to ask you about that. Like, have you found any cultural barriers or seen any best practice in other countries around their governments that are actually doing something maybe more forward thinking than we are? Or are you reintroducing basically all things democratic from a Western perspective?
It's a good question, because I'll tell you this. There are one of the most striking differences. This is funny. So China, let's say China, for instance. Yeah. China, which right now the U.S. is just absolutely throwing darts at relentlessly. Whatever you want to call China, and I've been immersed in it. I mean, I have an apartment over there. I know these people, that I work with. I've come to understand that they are literally spending billions, and not just saying they're going to spend billions. They are spending billions, right? So we've got a contract with the Chinese military. I'm out there with Chinese generals. It's me, Kevin. It's bizarre. It's to this day, right? And you're not supposed to be out there in the autonomous zone. You're just not supposed to be out there as a foreigner. And I'm out there. Yeah, right. So that's the way my life works. So they are actually affecting change, and they are doing what they'll say they do. That's literally the bottom line.
Yeah.
South America, every government has their platform. Every government has their promise. Every government has their rationale as to how that's going to work. We all know how it works when it ends up to that day when they find their pencil bins and they sit down and open their books. Things change, right? But one thing about Panama, for instance, with his new president, I sat down with President Varela. I sat down. We had coffee many times, the past president. We talked about this and that and how we're going to do this. And wonderful guy, but he was caught up in his own misunderstanding that you can allot $80 million to water, but if you don't have the infrastructure to put the water infrastructure in, you're going to have to spend another $150,000 to get the infrastructure. It just doesn't work.
Yep.
Much like every other thing, right? But the new government understands that, a real slow, pragmatic approach, and they see our system. That's why I've been invited down to fill that gap, and they're willing to do it. They're absolutely fine with it. So once we prove our first system, we're looking at clusters of 5 up to 25 in the next 2 years, and then on from there.
Do you think your biggest roadblock is the so-called civilized First Nation worlds like Canada, U.S. and
Sorry, Andrew, pardon me?
Would these nations like the U.S. and Canada and Britain, do you find that they block you a little bit more, or they're not as receptive?
Well, we don't. I haven't even approached the U.S. And or Britain. I honestly, I think my focus has always been in the marginalized developing areas, right? And it has been. So my head's been in that. I really don't know if there's any blocking there. But, I mean, a good example, and I think you're correct to a degree, is like Flint, Michigan, right?
Right.
It's a pretty good example of not blocking, but just downright stupidity.
Yeah.
I mean, you're fucking kidding.
Yeah, totally. Like,
honestly.
Yeah.
And I know of 5 systems that have tried to be deployed there. 3 of them were funded, self-funded and displaced, and they're working fine. The government's doing magic bleep about it.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'll never understand that. And what I'm into now and what I've been discovering is frightening, as well as it's it's like the most beautifully frightening thing I can suggest that I've ever done.
I'm not sure if you were in town a couple of years ago when there was a presentation at the North Island College at the Stanhagen Theatre around our watershed here in the Comox Valley.
No.
There was a few presenters there that day. Island Timberlands, we had a woman who is a local ecologist and looking at our watershed from an ecological perspective, and to look at the watershed like you would almost look at a farm. Lately, we've been struggling here in the North Island to actually, we have an official community plan and we have a lot of people moving here out of the cities, and we have an issue around turbidity and our water rising and falling with these torrential downpours that we're now seeing, and then droughts. So one of the things local government is currently working on is looking at bringing a multi-million-dollar water treatment facility rather than looking at the ecological perspective. And could this actually be something that our streams and our current situation, is there a way to mitigate that here locally?
You mean mitigate with what with our technology?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, so as fantastic as our system is, the demand here in the Comox Valley far exceeds what we could do. Even if we started networking systems,
Right.
I could sit down and design over 5 years a proportionally larger system, and absolutely. But you are right. So when we place a system in a borehole, I'm just going to give you an example. I'll come back to what you're saying. Sorry.
Sure.
That mitigates that. There's a hole right there. How cool is that? That mitigates that one problem, which is the front end right there, the front line. But everything back from there is the cause, right? This is the fix. The cause is the real issue. Why? For instance, in Africa and most nations, part and parcel is with the lack of clean, safe water, there's also a lack of sanitation and practice and know-how, right?
Yeah.
So the latrines are directly adjacent to borehole. You know what happens there. So much like we have up here, we have issues that are up in the back end, in that, in the ground, in the forest. The mitigation to try and solve that problem, that is, and I've heard the argument, I've heard all the arguments, and I get it, and what's really interesting because I really do listen to it. I try not to chime in because I don't have time to. I would talk for hours about it. The reality is. Yes, we do need a full-scale system here that's up to date. It's just that simple. We do need that. The turbidity issue is this. With turbidity, Health Canada is going to say, if your turbidity gets to a certain level, likely as much, you can drink that water during the boil water advisory. Absolutely not a problem.
Yep.
It's not an issue. I'm here to tell you that.
Yeah.
It's a number in the drinking standards that says the turbidity must be at so much and below, right, for Canada. And if it's slightly above that, no one's about to take that liability and say, you should be good to go.
Yeah.
Right? That's really what it comes down to. And yeah, weather has certainly changed. And anybody that say it hasn't is an idiot.
Yeah.
Right? We know that. Right?
Just maybe not aware of their surroundings.
Or what you said. Right.
I'll go with idiot.
Right? I mean, honestly, I get it, right?
Yeah.
I've been on Earth half a century and stuff's changed. I mean, yeah, I think there's action that needs to be taken on the back end in the forest and practices, etc. But by the same token, there's been logging around our watershed for 100 years. Mm-hmm. All the trees burned down in the 30s.
And actually, our watershed is currently owned by a forestry company.
Right. And I think a bigger thing to do is, yeah, turbidity is an issue, but look at the activity in that lake. Look at other places. They don't allow that.
Yeah.
They're starting to slow that down now, right? There's watersheds in China. You're not allowed to go because they're so sacred. You're not allowed to go near anything motorized.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
That's
you don't
right.
get within 20 meters of the shoreline. There's no such. There's a fence, right?
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
beach is a fence. So, yeah. In short, sorry, our system wouldn't be able to mitigate the demand here. The solar panels that I use are from China. They just are. Because 99% of them are built in China and they're brought back here.
They're like everything else.
And solar panels are made by way of necessity of fossil fuels. There's no way around it. Until something happens, and it's not going to happen in the next, and I'm here to tell you, probably 20 years until there's a really big shift.
Yeah.
But right now, we need that to make that, right? And that's sort of what's happening. Now, these tariffs and this other stuff that's happening, I don't know. I suppose perhaps there is some opportunistic sort of motive there, financially, of course. That'd be stupid not to think so. But I think what it comes down to is if you go further back into everything else, if you go back into oil, wheat and other export and import, that's where the problem is. And I was listening to a discussion about the Huawei executive who happily and funnily enough, I know a lot of folks over there in Tencent who own the WeChat and Huawei, and they all have the same thing to say, right? The reason that this costs this much is because the other things cost that much, or the restrictions on those other things, which are way more in comparison to this. That's
Right.
the real reason. When you have a guy like Donald Trump literally closing the taps every day tighter and tighter, you're going to see things go up and up and up, and you're going to see restrictions. North America lives and dies by Chinese bits and pieces. There's no other way of saying it.
Yep.
I mean, if they stopped doing it, we wouldn't be running today,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So I think what has to happen is, I think that number one, and it's all on a whole other level, but governments have to get to really, first of all, that weirdo has to be gotten out of there, that administration, that guy down there.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow. And then he's also tightening the screws on our liberal government, on our prime minister. That's just the way it works.
Yeah.
Right? And we're a strong nation, but we're right beside these guys that hold a bigger part of the lever, right?
Right.
That has to happen. But you're right. Yeah, it's funny how you find that a lot of things in that sector seem to cost a fortune all of a sudden, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I can't do it without solar panels, so we have to buy them.
What do you do about water conservation? What do you think we should do as Canadians?
Oh, yeah. So I've always been I've always understood that it's important, but never really, like most, I would run the tap while I'm brushing my teeth.
Yeah.
Then I figured out you shouldn't do that, et cetera. It took me a while as an adult to get onto that.
Run the tap to let it get cold. That sort of thing.
Get it right, Yeah, but now I look at it and go, oh my God, I know people, I've seen people, I've held children that their mother would climb over glass for 5 miles to have that water that went down the drain. So it makes me ill because I got a really good perspective on it.
Yeah.
And, I've watched children, the physical deformities, I can see that. I've studied a lot about that. And I've given water to people that haven't had water in the 60 years of their life. They haven't had clean water for the first time. So I have 2 children, and I'm trying to walk my talk as best I can. And as far as conservation, of all the places in the world that we live in, which is strange, Canada, in everybody's mind, has this surplus of just water everywhere, right? But this is not the case.
No.
Mm-hmm.
It's not real. We have our own watershed here that has issues. I mean, look where we are right now. We're in stage 2, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
Right? It's bad. Up on the North Shore, it's even worse right now. It's going to be a bad one this year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I look at things that have changed over my life. I look at who's bombing. I flew for 17 years of my life too as a commercial pilot. So I look at the activity on Ministry of Forests and how many drops and how many. It's unbelievable what's happening. Weather change, right? Mm-hmm. Watershed dropping. Well, what we can do to conserve water here, I can tell you the simplest way to explain this. I've been all over the place, and I've talked to people that look at Canada as that place they need to go, that refuge. Not America, not South America, not England, Canada. But when I mention to them that we have people 110 kilometers from here that can't drink clean water, they're devastated.
Yeah.
They're devastated. And they look at that. They're so simple. They look at that, which is a fact now, and they look at the TV commercials. They look at the people basically out there hosing their cars off and washing their cars, and it's all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's all that they see. It all of a sudden becomes really stupid and sad to them. Right. So if somebody from the least sophisticated part of the most undeveloped region of the world that can barely speak English looks at me and goes, why are they doing that?
Because they don't know what they're doing, right? And it's about education. That's why you're here today, is to enlighten us, right?
Yeah, I suppose I shouldn't.
You're the
judgmental,
advocate.
but it's frustrating.
It is.
It is frustrating. I mean, you walk by people that, you've had months and months of dry weather and they're watering their lawn to make it green. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's like,
and you know what? You're
paradigm.
absolutely right. And Jesse, but and I have to go back to my same stance, and I say, yeah, it's about education. But there are some people that just will not accept that.
yeah.
The same people that don't accept the climate's changing are the same people that go, I can still water my plants. There's lots of water. Look at the white thing.
It's frustrating for sure to try to ask for help, and they have this mentality that's been given to them and it's been ingrained to them through infomercials and through, just their own upbringing. So we ourselves, our 20-year gap there, we're unlearning and going through all of this grief that we were lied to in so many ways, and now seeing the truth and reconciliation that we are actually a part of. And we're actually holding that space to actually grieve that out and ask for forgiveness because of our skin color or whatever. And to actually come and show up in that way. So seeing that there's projects like this where we can actually come and physically be there and help set this up is so healing. And it's like the couscous sum. We're going to unpave a forestry site and restore it here locally. And these kids are a part of that. And I've been a part of the Project Watershed there. So there's so many beautiful things that if we can try to focus on the beautiful work that you're doing and just try to forgive and not us and them anymore. It's just, it is what it is. And we still have the oil industry and I still work out there.
Right.
And I'm using that money to invest in these projects here. So
absolutely,
you know, there's duality there and people can point fingers and have opinions, but to actually do the footwork, you know, let's just set all of that aside and do the footwork. Right. So
absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah. I have other questions though. Are you still drumming with anybody these days?
No, I'm not. I'm not playing. I'm not playing right now. I took a break from that. I was, you know, I'm still drumming, but I'm not playing. I'm not out touring profession. I'm not doing that right now. And I think it'd have to be something pretty fucking amazing to make me go back out there. There's things I'm working on, but I'm not gonna. It's not gonna happen right now. This is what I need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is. Yeah, that's a beautiful, unbelievable thing, and you know, I'm super grateful to be able to do that. But it's, I'm here to tell you, like this that I'm doing is somehow, well, it just is way more gratifying. You know, entertaining people is fantastic, but I don't think I've ever felt anything like what I've been able to do in my life, and that's, yeah.
How do you stay grounded and what are the practices that you do daily and your rituals around being present with the gift of water? Like, do you thank the water like we do at home when we use it, or do you have any connection with it spiritually?
Yeah, I'm not one to mince words, and you know me. I don't do that. Okay. I just don't. And but what's interesting is, yeah, my partner, a very spiritual person, right? She'll tell you that I'm one of the most spiritual people there are on earth. Not just because I don't wear velvet pants and have a satchel that has whale's tears and pigeon dreams, and you know, and I can I can make a poultice and put it on my cheek, and you know, sorry, that sounded bad, but I am on on my own level. I am, and I that's how I work. Yeah, but I mean, in short, no, I don't think I do that. I'm a practical cat that my mind is involved constantly. Even as I'm sitting here and we're talking about things, I'm actually formulating what I need to get back and do later from hearing what you guys have brought back up in me, right?
Awesome.
So I'm a calculating weirdo, and that's where I put my energy when it comes to what I'm doing. That's my spirituality. I'm putting that back into that.
I like it. And
if that makes sense.
Well, I'm just curious too, like you're doing such good work, but there's still roadblocks and you're seeing these people that are like you said, like mothers crawling over, you know, for kilometers to try to get to water, which we take for granted for here, I think. And there's a bit of privilege around that. And so how do you stay centered and focused without like for me, like if I'm too hot, sometimes things come out that I don't mean to say.
It's a good question.
So and this is personal. I'm asking for a friend.
Well, I'll tell you what, my wife will be the best one to explain this because she says to me, she goes, I don't understand. And there's a lot to my life and my story, Andrew. We could do a whole podcast on the transgressions and the indiscretions I've made in my life. Sweet Jesus Christ, I've done some stuff that I can't even express to you right now inside of 42 hours, and you'll need a counselor afterwards. And you may not want to be my friend.
I doubt that.
But I've done some
I
stuff,
doubt it.
man, that she'll say, the stuff you've gone through is, I don't look at it like that. I'm a pretty humble guy. I've been shot at. I walked up on the FARC in the Darien Gap, what? How do you say? Colombia.
Colombia?
Right? Between Panama and Colombia.
Yeah.
Talked my way through that. We were down there working on a similar thing, and very much the same thing, I should say. And they came down the path with automatic weapons. We were pulled to the side and ended up eventually breaking bread and showing them how to build a hot water shower out of a plastic bag. And
wow.
It was awesome. I was almost kidnapped in Ecuador. I was in the car, and they were turned out to take me north to Colombia. They figured I had money, and I listened to it all go down, and I just sat with it, figured it out, and found the right moment to bounce out of the vehicle and hopscotched all over the country and got back. And I've had a gun shoved to my neck and my phone stolen. I've had all kinds of crazy in Haiti. Oh my God, Haiti was one of the worst things on 72 kilometers. 72 kilometers took us 28 hours to drive.
Wow.
Yeah, figure that out. The river's this deep. We had people smashing our vehicle with machete and screaming and rocking the car at one point with my counterpart, T-Man Emmanuel. And it's frightening, but it's more, you just have to figure out how you're going to get through this. And I've been around enough, and I've done some things and understand how things work to get through that. I've sat and I watched a little baby in St. Louis du Nord. She was sitting on her mom who had passed away that morning. I didn't realize she was dead, but everybody told me she was dead. I said, why is she still sitting there then? That's just the way it is.
Wow.
And then, so there's no water there. And she died of, and I can't even explain it to you. I've seen some things that are, I'm hurt. I think I'm still hurt, and I'll always be hurt by that. How do I keep it together? Mm-hmm. My mind, even when I'm in the thick of it, and I have the same flies from that are coming to me that are on this dead person. I just think about what I'm doing here, right? And then why I'm here, And then I come back and I sit with my family, and I'm able to have them understand that they're proud of what I'm doing. And then that's enough ammunition to go on a bit further and further and further. And
we're proud of you too,
how we
Kevin.
do it, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't say that to say, oh my God, I've
Thank
gone
you.
through hell, and it's not.
I think we'll need a follow up. I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think you've already saved lives. I think you're going to save plenty more, and I
Yeah.
think you're a pretty humble guy. But what you're doing here will save lives.
It will, Andrew. Yeah, it's if we can, if I can help, and I've always said this, right? If I can help a few people with this, then that's a pretty fantastic thing. Then I've done that.
Yeah.
And then if I'm not here tomorrow, because I believe this, right? It's about moments. So here's a moment we're having right now.
Yeah.
I don't know how many moments I have left on Earth. I have no fucking idea. You don't,
Yeah.
right?
Nope.
We
So
don't.
I'm making the most of every one. I literally don't. And this is going to sound funny. I've always said this, but I'm not going to waste a single drop of any given moment, considering what I do, right? There's a song right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, write that down. So whatever I'm doing today has to be important and about that. And then I know I've done something.
Great.
So it's going to save lives. And it's one of the most bizarre things to me is this thing, it's not rocket science. I mean, cleaning up water has been around since day one.
Yeah.
That's how it works, right? And you can it's an easily fixable solution, right?
Yeah.
But so much energy and so much money is spent on other things that the most basic of necessities, healthcare, water, mental health, they're just non-existent.
Yeah.
The effort's just not there. Why is it not there? Yeah. I'll never understand that.
Kevin, I thank you very much for coming here today and explaining what you're doing. And clearflow.ca, that's FLO. I think we'll follow up again. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on this and see where this goes. Thank you.
I appreciate it,
Yeah,
Andrew.
thanks, Kevin.
And
Thanks
Jesse.
so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate you, your interest and your passion in this too. Something we should all share the same interest in, right?
I think so.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to The Doghouse with Andrew Davis.